It was 0405. I was in the Battle of Fallujah, the second battle, November 2004. I was with 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines. And it was, we were on it was called Henry Street, which was the main MSR, one of the main MSRs from the train station that went straight into the city. And we went through that city so fast that we pushed the enemy out and they surrounded us. That's why we ended up doing house-to-house fighting. But I was in a Humvee and I was engaging the enemy with a 50 caliber, but I was backed up into a big, like a high-rise building, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 stories high. And I was engaging this building that was just saturated with bad guys. And this guy came out and fired an RPG, and it went right past my head and impacted the wall behind me.
This episode is brought to you by Trenton Coffee, a veteran-owned brand and lifestyle. And while they're masters of cold brew, Trident's beans are roasted to create a flavor that shines whether you drink it hot or cold. There's no bitterness, there's no burnt taste, it's just good tasting coffee. Their coffees taste amazing hot, which is how I prefer it, while still designed to excel as a cold brew. But Trident Coffee is more than just great taste. Trident supports your wellness journey, featuring ingredients like organic mushrooms, adaptogens, and nootropics. It's made for those who enjoy good coffee and value quality and health. So if you're looking for a coffee that meets you wherever your day takes you, hot or cold, you need to check out Trident Coffee. I know I said I prefer hot coffee, but here's a tip from me. Mix their instant cold brew with your favorite protein for a protein coffee drink that's great cold. You can thank me later. I know there's a lot of coffee options out there, but give Trident a try. I know you'll enjoy it as much as I do. Head over to tridentcoffee.com and use the promo code TDP15 for 15% off your order. That's TDP15 for 15% off your order. This episode is brought to you by Soflete, a tactical fitness company founded by Special Operations soldiers. Soflete is dedicated to helping you achieve a healthy lifestyle, from expertly crafted training programs to high-quality proteins, pre-workouts, and sleep and recovery supplements. They've got everything you need to power through your day. Soflete also has a full line of clothing. They have you covered from shorts to cold weather gear. Embracing the motto, Die Living, Soflete inspires us all to embrace life with vigor and resilience. So take the first step towards a healthier you. Visit Soflete.com. That's SOFLETE.com and use the promo code TDP2024 to get 20% off your order. Again, that's TDP2024 for 20% off your order.
Hey everyone, welcome back. My guest this time served in the Marine Corps. He was forced out in 2005 due to an injury that he sustained in combat while in Fallujah. He took the skills that he had gained in the Marine Corps, got himself an initial job working with AT&T, kind of struggled through the economic downtimes of 2008, 2009. He's gone back to college or gone to college, pushed all the way through to a PhD. Today, he works for the government as a civilian employee. But in addition to that, he got kind of tired of seeing how his city was being run. And so he decided to step off the sidelines and throw his hat in the ring. He's running for city councilman for the city of Temecula. As he puts it, though, it's not because he's got a desire to be in politics or be a politician. It's his way to continue to serve his community. So let's get into it. Here's episode 166 with George Rapciewicz. Strap in, get closer to that microphone.
Yep, here we go.
So like I explained to you, what I like to do is kind of take the listeners kind of on your journey. Okay. So let's take you all the way back to a young boy. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
I was born and raised in Trenton, New Jersey. When I finished high school, I was almost about a year out of high school, and I wasn't going anywhere. So it's a funny story. I actually enlisted in the Marine Corps. I didn't even tell my parents. I checked out of my studio apartment. I got rid of all my stuff, sold my car.
Let's take you back just a little bit, though. As a young boy, what took up your time? Were you into sports, academics?
No, I was more or less getting in trouble a lot. I was the only white kid on my block. Everybody was Puerto Rican and black, so we were kind of like a lower middle class type of family that were struggling. But I did play some sports in high school. I was never very good at sports, so to speak. But I did do a lot of gaming. It was the thing growing up. You know, I'm 47 years old, so we did a lot of online gaming and things of that nature. But other than that, I honestly had no exponential events in my childhood.
What did mom and dad do for work?
Well, my parents were divorced, so my mom got remarried, and my brothers lived over in Pennsylvania with at the time, my stepfather. I lived with my dad in New Jersey, in Trenton, stayed with him, and my dad he had 2 jobs. He did sales at a lumberyard, and then he also sold pneumatic nail guns, nail staples, things of that nature. So he had to work 2 jobs.
You mentioned brothers. So are you the youngest? Are you in the middle?
I'm the oldest.
And how was that divided relationship? Do you find that because they were in Pennsylvania, are you close today, or did you guys kind of grow apart? Or
I wouldn't say we grew apart. We all went down different paths. My one brother, he works for the railroad. I come from a long line of railroad people, like Amtrak. My grandfather, my uncles, my cousins, my one brother, Wesley. And my other brother, he works in New York City. He's a big time risk management guy. So we get along, but I would say that we're not close like we should be as brothers, but there's no animosity.
Got it.
Because they were just raised on the Pennsylvania side with my mom and my stepfather, and I stayed with my father. So the reason my mother kept me at my father's is my stepfather used to beat the hell out of me, and I used to take the brunt of the beatings from my brothers. But then she ended up leaving him, and then she's been remarried for 20-something years now, almost 30 years. Really nice guy, Gary. He's a really good man, and I'm very happy for my mom. But my mother, she pulled me out of the house to stay with my father because my stepfather was very, very abusive, and my dad was the man. My mother felt that I needed a man as a role model, which my dad was. My dad was a role model, but my dad was very old school, so he didn't play around. He'd knock you upside the head if you got out of line. And to be honest, I needed that as a kid.
That was also that era too.
Yeah, it was pretty commonplace, which I think we need to bring some of that back. But yeah, my brothers are very successful. I would say that I'm pretty successful. You know, I serve my country and doing this right now I'm trying to take care of my city, my civic duty back to the city as a city council person. But yeah, you know, kind of to answer your question, we're not close, but we do love each other.
Were you old enough at the time to recognize, or did your mom actually explain to you, like, hey, your stepdad is abusing you. I'm going to get you out of the house to protect you. Or did you just kind of think like, damn, I'm just getting kicked off to dad's place?
At the time, it was, I'm just getting kicked off to dad's place. It wasn't until I got out of boot camp, and then my mother brought up, you know, the subject. But I said, I understand why you did it, Mom. I'm just glad you got rid of that man. So as soon as I'm transitioned to my father's house, excuse me, I'm sorry. My mother left that man.
Got it.
So, which my brothers were in a good place. But he used to beat me all the time, but he tried to do it to my brothers, but I would step in the middle and take the beatings for him, fight back when I could. I was only like 11, 12 years old. So, and I only lived with my mom for a few years before, because she lived in Trenton, and then she met this guy, and then they moved to Pennsylvania. So,
with you growing up separated, and where I'm going with this, because you mentioned previously that you were kind of getting a little bit of a knucklehead, getting into some trouble. Is that a byproduct of your parents' divorce? Is it a byproduct of the people you were hanging around, or a little bit of everything?
I don't think it was a byproduct of my parents getting divorced, because they got divorced when we were very little. It was the neighborhood that I was in, the culture, and trying to fit in. It was the people that I was hanging around with. It's like, so I lived here on South Trenton on the street called Lamberton Street, on the corner of Lamberton and Layler. The middle school was down the road. It was called Grace Dunn Junior number 4 middle school, Grace Dunn Middle School. So when you walk down the street, you come into the Hamilton Township side, which is next to Trenton. Once you cross the railroad tracks, you're in like an area where there's a lot of white folks. So, but this area was Puerto Rican. All south side was Puerto Rican, and then some black folks over here. But as you're walking up the street, this part was also some white folks, but then the Puerto Rican line was cut off at the railroad tracks. So when I used to walk to school, I would get jumped by the white guys because I was from South Trenton. And they would, for pretty much my entire junior year. And then I would come home, and then the black guys that lived on the border here would jump me. The Puerto Ricans never bothered me. The Puerto Ricans were my friends because I was part of their neighborhood. So I had to fit in. When we did crazy stuff, we did crazy stuff. Nothing criminal or anything like that. It's just we were wild. You know, they had these giant cranes that were abandoned on the Delaware River that back in the day, it was a huge industrial area. And those things went like 70 feet in the air. And we used to climb out and jump into the river. Yeah, we did some crazy stuff. So that's that kind of stuff. It wasn't really my parents. It was just the era that I grew up in, the 80s. And we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have video games until a little later when Nintendo came out and Sega. So we were always outside.
How were you in school as a student?
Oh, my God. I got to be honest with you. I'm surprised I even graduated high school because I was a total rock. You know, and I think what it was, I just needed to mature and grow up. So, and when I got out of the Marine Corps and I went to college, I was getting really good grades. I was like, wow, okay. But I was focused. I didn't have any distractions. So it was just, and it was hard going to high school too and middle school when you have all these interactions that were negative. It wasn't until high school where it got a lot better. When you go to high school, you have all the city precincts that are in that school. But it was a hard learning environment. And I mean, when you're walking through, you know, metal detectors to get into school, gets a little creepy. So
how was your relationship with your father?
Good. It's still good. Yeah. My dad's, he's a Navy veteran. You know, he's still stubborn, man. Sometimes he thinks that I'm this 15-year-old kid after I'm Dad, I'm 47 now, you know, take it easy. Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. But I went home to help him when he had hip surgery. My brothers helped him last time. He had a faulty hip surgery. So I went home for a week and helped him. I cleaned all his gutters. I cut the leaves. Got his house all prepped. I was working 15 hours a day, moving sand. He has all the sand that built up at the bottom of his house because of wash off. And this is back in Jersey. And then we talk on the phone every other day. We should talk a lot, but with the campaign, it's and my full-time job, it's a little
busy.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, and then my relationship with my father is, he made mistakes along the way, but we all do. But his intentions were good. And my relationship with my mother's good as well. You know, it's just I don't hold her no fault for what happened with my stepfather. She was trying to take care of 3 boys. And then some people should say, you know, well, you should be mad at your mom. And, you know, I know why she did it because my dad left, because I don't know the history. But my mom met this guy. He was financially stable. And that was the culture back then. She was trying to take care of all of us. So I don't fault her for that. I just wish that she would have vetted that guy a little bit more before she made that decision. But that was a long time ago. So we forgive and we try to forget, but it's hard to forget.
I think one of the and I don't want to say necessarily unfortunate things, but one of the things that happens for us as we get older is we start looking at our parents, you know, in a weird way. You try to put your vision or your impression of them as a 40-year-old man, 45-year-old man back 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
It isn't fair to them. And like you said, when the positive side of it though is when we do get enough laps around the sun that we can look back on it and kind of go, man, they just did the best they could.
Yeah.
And so I think for a lot of us as we get older, some of that animosity that we had when we were younger because we didn't understand them per se, they didn't understand us, that kind of goes away. And you start just kind of seeing that
he, she, mom, dad, whoever, were just trying to do their best.
Agreed. Absolutely. And that comes with experience, when your own life experiences.
True. You mentioned the family business being trains. How did your dad avoid it? And was it ever an option for you?
I took a different path. I went in the Marine Corps. So my dad doesn't, it's on my mother's side of the family, the railroad people.
Got it.
So I apologize. I didn't mean to be, I wasn't clear on that. My father, so I'm of Polish and Irish descent. So my family is, on my father's side is Polish. So last name Rapciewicz is in Polish, but it's pronounced Rapciewicz. And my other side of my family is Irish, so Manning. And if you look at the culture on the northeastern seaboard, Irish, Polish, Italian, Puerto Rican, Greek, those kinds of ethnicities in that region. But my father was that was the poor side of my family, who worked his way up, who worked very hard. My mother, she wasn't poor, she was middle class. But her father was a railroad guy. Both my uncles were on her side were railroad people. My cousins are railroad people. My brothers are railroad people. My one brother's a railroad people.
Got it. When you were growing up, was your dad pushing you towards anything career-wise? Did you have, before you went in the Marine Corps, did you have aspirations while you were in high school, what you thought you might do?
I was going to go in the Navy because my dad, he's a sailor, and he was pushing me to go in the Navy, but I didn't join the Navy. I went into the Marine Corps. But the funny story is, I was living in a little studio apartment, and back then in Jersey, you could be 18 years old and 10 bar. So there was a bar, Italian place right next to me it was a bar. It was a really nice bar. And I used to 10 bar, and I was making good money, and I was able to pay my little studio place. But I was getting really tired of it. So I didn't tell nobody nothing. And I went down on a recruiter, and less than a month later, I was gone at boot camp at Paris Island. I didn't tell my mom, my dad, nobody. Well, I got selected for intelligence when I was in the Marine Corps, my background and my ASVAB scores. Apparently the Marine Corps said, you're smart. I was kind of shocked by that.
Was the Marine Corps the only one you went and looked at? Did you talk to the Army or?
I just talked to the Marine Corps. It was just kind of like, if I'm going to do this, I want to go all out. I want to, it'd be kind of cool. And there was a recruiter that came and talked to us while I was in high school, and I was really impressed with him. But while I was in boot camp, I was like week 6 of boot camp, and my drill instructor said, "Come here, recruit Rapciewicz, and you're going to call your parents right now." I said, "Well, sir, recruit don't understand." He goes, "You're missing." I was like, "Oh, okay." So I didn't know what was going on, but apparently I was on a milk carton. Remember the milk cartons back in the days?
Yeah.
My parents reported me missing, and it got referred to the FBI database, but I was an adult. Well, when you're in the military and they run your background, and then they do it for security clearance, because intelligence was a top secret, which I never got to intelligence, and I'll tell you why. It hit the system. So I had to call them. And my mom was so mad at me. And my dad was like, "Well, at least you did it." And they were like, "All right." But anyway, everybody came to my graduation. It was great. But I didn't get to go. My drill instructor said, "Your penance is you don't get to go to that intelligence interview." Because I came in the Marine Corps open contract. I just wanted to be a Marine. So he made me miss it. So I never got intelligence. So they made me a wireman and a radio operator.
Wow.
Yeah.
How was that experience for you, though, first day in the Marine Corps, standing those yellow feet?
I was scared to death. I was scared to death, my friend. I had to go to the bathroom so bad, and they did not let me go. So it was Paris Island. They picked us up at this little airport in Beaufort, and it was like 6 of us, and they put us on this bus. The bus took us to this another area where there was a bunch of other recruits. And we went on this, we all got back on the bus. Then they drove us, and this drill instructor gets off, and he's big, he's huge, he's scary. I'm like, oh, shoot, here it goes. He started yelling and screaming, "Get on my yellow footprints." And it was game on. And then they were asking, "Who's the drug waiver?" If you didn't tell right now, is your chance for, what do they call it? Amnesty. And I was like, I'm not worried about that. I didn't have nothing to do with that. So, but everybody was raising their hand. I was like, wow, okay.
Did you feel at that point in your life you were pretty squared away, even
for the Marine Corps, or did you feel like you were completely like fish out of water in this process?
I was a fish out of water. I actually I was out of shape, man. My senior drill instructor, Samborski, and my junior drill instructor, the heavy was Sergeant Bear, and the junior drill instructor was Sergeant Jules, who I later bumped into as Master Sergeant Jules in Fallujah, Iraq. They would wear me out on the quarterdeck, but I got so strong in boot camp. I dropped 56 pounds, man. I was a lean, mean, loving machine, and I left there a different person. My grandfather walked right past me at graduation and didn't even recognize me.
Were you thinking just 4 years and get out, just to get that little bit of training underneath your belt, or did you have a plan going in?
I did not have a plan. I just wanted to get out of Jersey, to be honest. And then I ended up staying in a couple more enlistments until I got hurt in Iraq. So back then we didn't have the Wounded Warrior Battalion or Wounded Warrior Regiment in the Marine Corps. They kind of just pushed you out. Not long after, they ended up saying, hey, we could start retaining people. And they created the Wounded Warrior Battalion and Wounded Warrior Regiment.
So what year did you go in?
1996.
And then let's lead up to your injury in Fallujah. So what year did you deploy?
It was 04-05. I was in the Battle of Fallujah, the second battle, November 2004. I was with 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines. And it was called Henry Street, which was the main MSR, one of the main MSRs from the train station that went straight into the city. And we went through that city so fast that we pushed the enemy out and they surrounded us. That's why we ended up doing house-to-house fighting. But I was in a Humvee and I was engaging the enemy with a 50 caliber. I was backed up into a big, like a high-rise building. I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 stories high. And I was engaging this building that was just saturated with bad guys. And this guy came out and fired an RPG, and it went right past my head and impacted the wall behind me. It broke my arm and a bunch of shrapnel in my neck, my back, cracked my SAPI plates in my back, which saved my life. I don't know if you know what SAPI plates are. They're like the armored plates, so that go in your flak. And then have some nerve damage. But I went back. They didn't even know my arm was broken. I got treated, and then they sent me right back in. Like, I was in a lot of pain, but it was like, oh, you're fine. But I knew something was wrong with my hand, especially my hand and my arm, because it was like just bleeding, and I couldn't really close my fist. It wasn't until we got back to the States that I got x-rays, and they're like, your arm is smashed. So,
stupid question. Were you knocked unconscious at that point, or at the initial impact of the RPG?
I don't think so. I was definitely stunned. I mean, I could have been. I don't really know. That's a good question. I don't think so. I know I had my ears were bleeding because of the back pressure from the blast, and my ears were bleeding. My nose was bleeding. I still have sinus issues from that kind of stuff. But
what about the exfil out of there? Did you guys have to fight your way out?
Oh yeah. It was a nonstop fight. It was crazy. It was a lot of foreign fighters, like Chechens. And if people don't know about the Chechens, the foreign fighters, they were hardcore. We had there was like a bunch of them, 4 of them pinned on one building, and they were just picking Marines off left and right. So it wasn't my group. It was another group that had to go and place shape charges on the building and just take the building down because they were in an elevated position. There's nothing else we could have done.
So you weren't immediately, per se, pulled off the line and sent to a medical facility, whether or not they flew you out of the area, but just
no.
They basically stuck a Band-Aid on it and said, get back out there.
Yeah.
And how long did you go with the pain in your hand before somebody actually realized, whoa, his arm's broken?
Well, I have what's called radiculopathy in this arm. So I would say maybe 7-8 months. Yeah, about 7-8 months. I would say that's probably about right.
In country the whole time?
No, we got back so we were there from June to January. June 04 to January 04. And I would say it was probably July of 2005 is when I think I finally got treatment for it. And I didn't get my Purple Heart until I got out of the service. I had to do an update to my discharge papers because there was so many people that got wounded back then. Like people were getting hit left and right in all branches of service back then. But it was probably about almost two and a half years from the date of the incident till when I got finally awarded my Purple Heart.
What was the final, I'll say, catalyst to actually get you in front of a doctor and have them realize that your arm was broken?
I couldn't do pull-ups anymore. It was hurting. It was like my hand, I had no strength. So, yeah, it was the pull-ups.
Where was the break actually at?
Well, I don't know what they call these things. The carpal areas. The
Metatarsals, I think.
All these bones here were pretty much like, they were peppered with shrapnel. And then the bone that runs here, the forearm bone, oh God, I can't remember the name of these things. It was cracked. It wasn't a clean break. It was cracked because of the shrapnel, but it calcified. So this part, though, they went in and they just pulled the shrapnel out. And then they did some adjustments. They went in there and cleaned out some stuff, and it actually helped a lot, but I still have radiculopathy. So
the extent of the injury, were you ever even given the option for a potential to stay in the Marine Corps?
No. No. No, it was different Marine Corps then.
So they basically said, hey, this is your injury. Thank you for your service. You're out.
Yeah. And they gave me a what's called a separation bonus. Like it was like $7,000, which whatever.
And when did that happen? When still 04?
Separation bonus was October. Well, when I got out of the Marine Corps, probably November 2005. Yeah, I got out in October, but I think it hit. It's like $7,700. But it was weird because when I filed for VA disability, they took all the back pay from the VA. They took that $7,700 back. It's like,
thank you, government.
Yeah, okay, it's fine.
Where were you stationed when you got discharged?
Pendleton. Pendleton.
So is that what kept you here in California, or did you already plan to stay in California?
No, I love California. I don't like the politics, what they're doing in the state. I like crap on law enforcement and the citizens of the state. But I love California otherwise. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to do here.
Do you have a plan for what you were going to do afterwards?
No, I was scared to death. But I had some training. I knew how to do network cabling and infrastructure type related projects. So got a job down in Coronado. For not having a college degree back in 2005, 2006, a $52,000 a year job is a good job. But I didn't want to do that forever. That's why I started going to college. I was like, I want to do better.
How was it for you once you were out in a civilian, as far as that transition away from the structure of the Marine Corps?
It was definitely a struggle. I know when I'm okay now, but when I first got out, I found myself looking at stuff on the side of the road. Like there was like a box or something, but I knew it wasn't a big deal. But I was thinking, because we saw like IEDs, we would see whenever we'd freak out. And a lot of people don't understand, and veterans do that have been over there. If you see like a box on the side of the road, you're like, oh, you got to stop. You got to approach it, or what are you going to do? Is it just a box? So, but that took a couple years to get over, but I was okay afterwards. But the transition was difficult the first few years. And when I was working on my bachelor's, I think it was 2009, 2010, we lost our condo. We had a condo. When I lost my job, I got laid off because of the economy.
That 08, 09.
Yeah. And I hired an attorney to do what's called a loan mod. And he took my money and ran. He did it to like $2-3 million. He was huge investigated. They caught him. Finally, he was in like the Midwest somewhere. But I lost my house. He was taking my money. It took like $2,700. We lost our house. So it was bad, man. That was a bad time. And we almost became literally homeless. So I had like a 2-year-old kid, my daughter. So we were going to pack our stuff and put it in storage and then go back to New Jersey and stay with my dad for a while. But then I got a call for an opportunity. So, yeah.
What pushed you towards college and getting your bachelor's degree and then eventually all the way on to your doctorate?
Well, my father and my mother were always very adamant about we didn't have a college degree. My mother didn't graduate high school. She didn't get her GED until she was like in her 40s. So my dad, he graduated high school, then he went in the Navy, but they were always adamant about if you want to move up in the world and you want nice things, you got to work for it. Part of working for it is to seek higher education. So I remember that was constantly embedded in our heads. So that's why I went to school. I said, well, I don't have my parents anymore. I'm a man now. I'm married. I have a daughter that's coming. I need to, what's the old saying, crap or get off the pot. And so I did. I used my GI Bill and yeah.
Now you said you lined up a job based off of your experience doing networking and that type of stuff. When you went towards your bachelor's degree, did you stay in that field and go towards computer science networking?
No, that's a very good question. So as I worked in those jobs, I ended up, the job from Coronado, I left and I got hired as a contractor with AT&T, and I was doing cable mining where we're pulling the old trunk and tow cables and exchange cables from under the manholes. So I was a project manager and I was doing really good at it. So I went to college to get my bachelor's of business with a concentration in project management. And eventually I got my MBA with a specialization in project management, as I kept progressing in that field, project management.
How long of a lapse between getting your undergrad and going to get your grad degree?
2 months, if that, because
Okay.
I went right into it.
So did you know that while you were, because I remember you mentioned that once you got out, went to college, all of a sudden you started getting good grades, kind of, I'm assuming probably started applying yourself.
Yes.
Kind of found that you enjoyed education.
I did.
But while you were in your undergrad program, did you know that grad school was going to happen?
No, wasn't until the last year. So I finished my bachelor's with a 3.87 GPA, which because I worked really, really hard. And I said, you know what? I think I could do my master's. And that was probably the last year. That's when I made the decision.
How does the decision then to keep going? Because that jump, you know, I've got my master's also, but that jump to doctorate, I mean, that's a huge commitment.
Yeah, it was. It was very hard. So I got my MBA in 2012 and I started my doctorate in March of 2019 and I finished it May of 2022. Sorry. I did it. My dissertation was 186 pages long and exactly 200 references. But while I was also working on my dissertation, I also worked on a joint publication with one of my old instructors from my master's program, Dr. Donald Baresh. So I did the research. It was empirical. All he did was take it from APA, American Psychological Association, and change it to Chicago style footnotes. Because I wasn't familiar. I was never taught with Chicago.
What was the motivation though to go towards a doctorate program? What were you were you hoping to leverage that to do something completely different than what you were doing at the time?
No, I wanted to be the first doctor in the family, even though it's not an MD, it's still like a doctorate. And that's a lot of misconception is, you know, you have MDs, doctorates of business, PhDs, you have DDSs, doctorate dental surgery, DDs, doctorate dentistry. So they're doctors. One's are in a medical field and the others are an academician or a practitioner like me, which is a doctorate of business. But it was more or less something that I thought about for when I finished my master's, like, man, what if I could do this? And I got to tell you, it was one of the hardest things I ever did. You work full time and then you're up to 1, 2 o'clock in the morning writing papers because you're working on your dissertation from day one. So yes, it was.
What college did you get your doctorate from?
Walden University.
Did you defend your dissertation in person?
I had to do it via video call because it was during the COVID issues and it was the die down of COVID. So I had to do it via video call. But not only did I have to defend my dissertation, So when I got published for my research, which was on COVID-19 and supply chain management and how the Chinese are monopolizing the whole supply chain, that was a single blind review, which means it's one person reviewing it. But in order for me to cite it in my research, which is very rare for PhD doctoral students to be able to cite their own research in their dissertation, I had to go through my chair and co-chair, Dr. Uchi and what was her name? Dr. Richardson. They double blinded. They both reviewed it and approved my publication for me to cite it in my research and my dissertation, which was pretty cool. So
going forward, you're going to use that to get to a teaching position or any aspirations for that?
You know, I've tried. I've looked around. I've been applying to like Mount San Jacinto, Palomar, Cal State San Marcos. It's very difficult. It's very hard to get in. I don't do too good on some of their, what is it called? Diversity, equity, inclusion statements that a lot of these universities have right now. What I talk about is more inclusivity, bringing veterans in. And I guess that's not appealing to them. So I never get a response back. And I don't really talk about the whole diversity and equity thing, but I am talking about inclusivity. Why don't we have more veterans involved in our community and academia? But I guess it doesn't fit their modus operandi, which is Latin for method of operation. So
while you were going through all of your schooling, undergrad, grad, doctorate, were there any veteran groups or anything that you kind of leaned on to help you through those processes?
Well, they had the Student Veterans of America at Walden, and they had, I think they had those at the other university I went to, American Air Continental University as well. But I tried to get involved, but I would never get any responses back. So no, to answer your question, no. I really wish Student Veterans of America would be more active. They have different chapters, but they were not very active at Walden University.
What are you doing today?
For work? Mm-hmm. Well, other than hanging out with you, I work for the federal government, and civil service. So I'm a program management specialist, and I just got back from Marinette, Wisconsin. I was on a 5-month, almost 6 months detail there, where I was overseeing a $3.172 billion shipbuilding program. And they asked me to stay. I was like, well, this is Wisconsin. It's the middle of winter. Hell no. I'm not. No, I don't want to do it.
Making that complete transition. So for somebody who might be coming out, who's got the background in networking like you did, mm-hmm. getting to where you're at today,
yeah.
Would it require it? And I'm not underselling it, but It wouldn't require the doctorate degree, correct?
No, it's a project. If you want to go into project management, go ahead, finish your.
I was just gonna say, walk somebody through getting from where you started with that company in Oceanside to getting a government contractor job, taking on a 6-month project in Wisconsin.
Well, I'm actually not a government contractor. I'm actually a federal employee, civil service. So this was a special detail that I applied for. And prior to that, I did a 3.5-year detail in Washington, D.C. at the Navy Yard. So I've traveled.
Did you go looking for that, or was that just an opportunity that happened to come your way?
So we have an internal dashboard that we can apply to these details. We send a resume, and then we interview for it. So they interviewed like 50 or 60 people for the DC job, and I got it.
Now, when you say we have that dashboard, who's we? What is that?
The agency that I work for.
Oh, okay.
The federal agency that I work for, which is the Navy.
Got it.
So as a civil service, not a contractor. So when I finished that detail, I said, well, I want to do one more. And I applied to the one in Marinette, Wisconsin. They liked what they heard, and I went out there. They paid for the costs. But they offered me the job, and I said, it would be a pay cut because it's locality pay, and I had my family out here. I didn't want to move my family, and I really don't like the cold. So I went back to my command, my parent command, and then I'm a program management specialist.
That where I'm trying to get somebody the information of.
Sure.
How did you make the jump to that government position? Is it something where there was just an opening? You're like, I'm going to go apply for this.
Gotcha.
Did somebody in your ear like, hey, you should go check this out?
Yeah. Yep. I got you. So if you want to do, so there's a usajobs.gov website if you want to become a federal employee. Well, you have to look at the job description, and you have to tailor your resume to kind of fit that job description. You might have to reword your stuff just to get in. once you get in, and then you still have to go through the same process to apply for other jobs, but it's very hard to get into the federal government. It took me, I got hired in December of 2010. So I started applying in 2005. So it took me almost 6 years to get looked at. And I was doing everything right. But if you have an engineering degree, there's jobs that they can direct hire you because they're looking for engineers. But my field, I'm not an engineer. I have to go through the vetting process, and they have veterans preference. But I'll tell you right now, these federal agencies, they get around it. If it's like a good old boy network, a lot of times that I found, if they have somebody that they want to hire, they're going to hire them. They're going to figure out how to do it. Sometimes they don't, when they don't have somebody they don't want to hire, they just have these extra positions. If they're like a GS 12 and less equivalent, you'll probably get in. But the 13s, 14s, 15 positions, because I'm at that level now, those are very competitive. And most of the time, they're already set up for somebody that they had in mind. So the other things that I found is for the 11, 12 positions, they usually create those to promote within. And if that person isn't a veteran that they want to promote, they find ways to get around the veterans hiring preference. Sometimes they can't, but majority of the time they can. I think the whole system is a sham, to be honest with you. But I really wish that we would have more opportunities for veterans within the federal government, because I think that we're losing a lot of good talent there.
Once you got in, did you find it rather easy or easier to move up through the GS ratings, or is that even a struggle?
Through the GS ratings, yes, but I'm on what's called Navy demonstration pay, so I'm on the NT pay scale, so it's not, I'll never go above the 13, 14 pay scale here. Would have to go to DC, which I don't want to do. I'm happy here. I'm content. I'm set up. I've been in DC. I want nothing to do with that bureaucracy over there. It's so expensive, and it's not a safe place. That whole area is so bad, so dangerous. The traffic is ridiculous, and people are inconsiderate, especially like on the highways, the 395 and the merger, the Beltway. It's ridiculous. You have to pay for parking everywhere. It's not really my thing. I'm happy where I am. I've tried to seek other employment in the area, but they're pretty much GS jobs. And you either have to wait for somebody to retire or pass away. And usually they already have somebody set up to get into that role. Do they count? Are you in the federal retirement system? And yes. Do they count your time in the Marine Corps towards that? Yes, actually, I bought back my almost 10 years in the Marine Corps and applied it toward my federal service. So I got almost 26 years right now. So no, 25 years. The longer you wait from the time you get out, the more expensive it becomes. So for me, I had a 5-year gap from when I got hired, almost 6 years. It cost me $4,200 to buy back that time. Now, I talked to some of my law enforcement buddies, and just to buy back their 4 years was like $30,000-$40,000 when they're at the end of at their twilight hour. I'm like, why does the state do that? That's crazy. It's just 4 years. The federal government, it's a lot better, cheaper. And we get a pension as well. I would imagine, though, that if you were trying to buy it back today, it wouldn't be $4,200 with the time, the time that's gone by. Yeah. Because I know one of the formulas that they factor in, obviously, when you're early on, you're making less money. So it's a ratio to what you're making, but it's also a factor of what you could potentially make that really increases the buyback. Because I know a lot of guys who had their, 4 years, 8 years, whatever it was, and foolishness, like we talked about earlier, where you get the laps around the sun, you look back, you're like, oh, I should have done that. Yeah. Let me go back. And now all of a sudden it's like you said, holy geez, it's gonna be $40,000 for me to buy it. And it's not worth it. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's very sad. I wish the state would fix that. I don't think it's just the state though. I think everybody who's in that position, I would imagine it's not just in California. No, well, for the federal government, I looked into what it would cost me right now to buy back my time today. It would be about $7,300, vice the $4,200 I paid. Not as much as I thought it would be. It's different in the federal government. I know that CalPERS and but you also have to be a federal
government employee.
Correct. Yes, you have to get hired into the federal system. And then once you're in, then there's a forms you fill out that they'll either deduct it from your pay or you can send a check in. So I paid it off right away. I had money saved up and I was like, pfft. And that put me in it. And after, so you have, I think it's like automatically they give you 6 hours per pay period if you served in the military. Otherwise, everybody else gets 4 hours of pay period, which is vacation. Buying back that 10 years put me at, once you hit 15 years, it's 8 hours per pay period. So I was earning a lot of vacation days. But I pretty much, at the end of the year, I donate a lot of it to people that are sick and need it because I don't really take a lot of vacation. But I usually just donate it to people. We have these forms we can fill out to give that to other people who are like out of sick leave that are like on their deathbed and try to help out.
One of the things I like to try to talk about and present the thing that you need to think about when you're coming to your transition. One of the huge things is your family, but also where do you want to live? Like you said, you were stationed at Pendleton when you got out. You liked Southern California. Your option was to stay. If you were you could have been in Barstow or 29 Palms. You're like, I want to get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
But the thing is that if you've already established your life there, trying to maybe necessarily find a job there might be difficult. Where I'm going with this is you've mentioned that you could have, I'll put it in air quotes, advanced if you would have taken a DC job or you take it.
Yeah. Has
not wanting to go away from home or relocate been a detriment in your career?
I wouldn't say it's a detriment. I'm at a comfortable position. I think for me, it's more quality of life. When you go to DC and you work in that environment, it can be very political and bureaucratic. And there's a finesse to it. I thought about going into what's called the Senior Executive Service, SCSs, and they're above the GS pay scale. They're executives. They're like equivalent to admirals and generals, but they don't rate a salute. And I've applied, but I in that case, I would go to DC or another area. But to go there for, a 14 position or a 15 position, all the money that even if they did have some relocation assistance, the money that I would probably spend out of pocket and then trying to find housing and then dealing with traffic and then the weather. And I don't know, I did the math. It's not really feasible right now.
From the flip side, if you relocate to DC, you got to that 14 or 15 mark, how long are you guaranteed to be able to stay there before you potentially would need to relocate again?
You only have to do 1 year in that pay grade to be eligible to apply for other positions in that same pay grade or promotion to the next pay grade. But there's not many 14, 15 openings on the West Coast. The majority of them are along the Eastern Seaboard, Midwest. Now, there's some down in San Diego. You have some at the Air Force bases, like Travis, or what's the one above LA? Oh, God, I can't remember the name of that Air Force base. And you got the Palm.
Why am I drawing a blank? It's not Edwards. Is it Edwards?
Edwards, yeah. And then March Reserve Base, I don't think they have that many positions at all.
Does the same thing come back into play, though, to get to one of those spots? It's pretty much somebody's got to retire or die?
Yes, pretty much. Or unless they create a new position. Yeah, and then, you get the good old boy clubs that you got to get through, too. So I've seen some pretty incompetent people get hired into some high-level positions, and they don't last very long. They just move them instead of getting rid of them. Or they move into other positions where they move out of state. And I know some people that do that. They go all over the place to get promoted, and they're there at that place for a year or two. Then they're over there in Washington State. Then they're in Hawaii. Then they're in Japan. Then they're back in DC. And I'm like, I don't want to live like that.
And that's the double-edged sword to it. I've talked to people throughout my career, and they always say, what's better, federal law enforcement or local law enforcement? And I can't say that there's one that's better than the other. It depends on what works with your life and what you want to do. I've had great contacts at the FBI, but one of the things that they talk about is, man, I'm an East Coast kid, and I wanted to get back to an East Coast city, but I couldn't, or vice versa. West Coast kid, I'm trying to get back to.
Yeah.
And they take what I think they call them hardship
tours.
You go down to Puerto Rico for a year. That doesn't guarantee that you're going to get the spot you want. It just moves you up higher on the list.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, is the downside to the federal system. Yeah, you've got the opportunity to go all basically around the world,
But on the flip side, you're also potentially going around the world. And when you're talking about your family and dragging them along,
yeah,
it's a huge impact.
Yeah, my daughter's settled here. My wife's settled here. I got family, my wife's side out here. And in the federal law enforcement, sometimes they don't have a choice. They say, you're done LA, you're going to DC. I have a choice. I'm not in law enforcement. But unless we have a RIF, which was a reduction in force, and wherever they send me, I have to go. But we're not at that stage just yet.
How did you get through any issues getting through COVID at the federal level?
They gave us this stupid letter of a high level, detrimental, mission essential. And I remember having to drive around. I felt like I was in Gestapo Germany, driving around with this stupid letter to go to the grocery store or whatever, because I was worried the cops were going to give me a ticket. And the cops don't care. The cops didn't care. Like, they got more important fish to fry. But they made us get the COVID vaccination, and I still have to get it because I travel overseas. So, unfortunately, I can't just. You have to pick and choose your battles.
That's exactly it. Sometimes, you can stand on principle, and I can respect that. But at the end of the day, you have to look at your family and who's going to be the ancillary victim by you picking a battle to stand on.
Yes, sir.
So everybody's got to make their own decision. I remember my wife and I loved to go to New York, and we were going to take my mother-in-law. She had never been, and it was right in the middle of COVID. Just after COVID, but they were still demanding proof of vaccine.
And masks. Yeah.
And my wife and I had a conversation, and it was just like, we're not going to take my mother-in-law and then have her not be able to experience everything because we aren't vaccinated. So you got to look at who are the other people in your life that are going to be impacted by it.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I understand where you're coming from.
Everybody's got to make their own decision.
Yep.
And that's what it comes down to. But I would say, your principles, yes, stand on your principles, have your convictions, but you also can't be so blinded to that it's going to have an impact on the people around you. And then you just have to weigh out the impact.
Yep. Yeah.
Martial arts.
Yes.
We know each other from Jiu Jitsu.
Yes.
But you said you've trained martial arts a long time.
Yes.
How'd you start?
Well, it was a Marine Corps martial arts program, McMap. And I got involved in that. And then when I got out, I started studying Muay Do and Kempo, Hawaiian style Kempo, Polynesian Kempo. And Muay Do.
Now, was the McMap required?
It wasn't when I came in. We did line training in the Marine Corps when I came in. It was pretty brutal, where people were getting their arms and legs broken, but McMap was like a whole nother level too. So it became a requirement. We had to do that all the time.
And the martial art that you transitioned into again, what's it called?
Muay Do, which is Korean. It's karate, aikido, kung fu, and taekwondo blended.
Oh, okay.
And that's from Grandmaster Tiger Yang. He was out of Fullerton. He retired. And I trained under his brother, Headmaster Paul Yang.
How do you find that particular style? Was it something you just passed by, or did you know somebody who was training it?
It was right outside the base where I worked. And instead of driving home with traffic, I would leave work and go right to Muay Do. It was right outside. And I would stay for two classes, and traffic died down, and then I would go home. And then Kempo was here locally. I actually had a martial arts spot here, and I had instructors we had Kaju Kembo, which is karate, judo, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and Kaju judo combined. So Sifu Joe Rotel used to teach that, and then there was another gentleman named Master Wayne Hopkins who taught the Polynesian Kempo. So I trained under those, and Kempo's like the law of the fist. Kaju Kembo is just Grandmaster Emperado found out in Hawaii. It's just an insane art. It's a beautiful art. And then went to train Jason's spot, Jason Medina here in Temecula. And I remember when we got the race floor put in, it was me and the other guy, big guy, firefighter, was like a lieutenant or a captain. Dan. Yeah, we were all there. Dan's a good carpenter guy. And we put that floor in, but man, we were beating the hell out of each other over there, rolling around, having a good time. And then I tore my labrums. And then I lost so much strength. It took me almost 2 years to get it back. I had to go into the gym.
Now, what caused the switch from the blended martial arts to just jiu-jitsu?
I needed to step up my ground game. cut and dry. And I'll tell you right now, if you don't have any background in ground game, if you take a wrestler and a boxer and you blend them, put them together, that's a bad, wait, what was that? The guy from USC back in the day, who was that spot out in Vista?
Dan Henderson?
Shamrock.
Oh.
Yeah. What was he, a wrestler? Ken Shamrock?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and he's a street fighter. The guy's a beast. So if I was a good striker. I come from a striking background. I understand joint manipulations and takedowns because of the judo and the karate background. But once you're on the ground, then what? And I'll tell you the stuff I learned with Jason just the year that I was training with him was, even rolling with you. It's crazy. Like the stuff that you can do. And you just have to be calm and collect and just remember what you're supposed to do. Don't freak out because I'm totally claustrophobic and somebody's choking me like this. And
yeah, claustrophobia and jiu-jitsu don't go together.
There was this big white guy who was huge. He was big, heavy set guy. And Jason, you know how Jason's a real lean and mean. And the guy was a black belt. He was from Poncho. Is it Poncho? Mm-hmm. Poncho's dojo.
From Murrieta?
Yeah. And Jason rolled with, and Jason looked so small. And this guy had Jason all wrapped up, and I have no freaking idea how the hell Jason got out of that and made that guy submit. That was insane. I was like, holy crap, man.
That's one of the things that I enjoy the most about it is just that learning process.
Yeah.
And you go all the way back to Helio Gracie. One of the things he says is jiu-jitsu's that martial art that you don't have to be the biggest or the strongest to persevere and to come out of it on top.
Yep. Yeah, they call it the gentle art. There's nothing gentle about it.
Was the shoulder injuries the first significant injury you've had doing martial arts?
No, I tore my ACL in a fight. I was doing like a semi-pro mixed martial arts bout. I tore my ACL. I did a jumping reverse roundhouse, landed it, knocked the dude out, but completely tore my ACL, my left knee. That took 2 years to recover. That sucks. ACL tears suck.
I don't ever want one.
It's hard. Your quad goes from like this to like, and that's the hardest thing to get back.
With your shoulder injuries, are you going to try to get back on the mats?
No. I don't know I think it's a combination of fear. I'll be honest with you, fear, because I'm 47 now. I'm getting old, and Jason's the same age as me, right? But Jason, he still competes, and I saw his.
He's also been doing it though for 12 or 13 years.
Yeah.
He understands. Half of it I've learned is it's learning to not put yourself in the bad position. That it seems like that's more of the game is if you really watch the people who are really good and have the duration to get to black belt and keep going, is it almost seems like what they learn is how not to put themselves in bad positions. You talk about Jason being a smaller guy, how he knows how to use his body to its maximum efficiency.
Yep.
I don't need to match you strength for strength. I just need to not put myself in a position where you can maximize your strength.
True. I would agree with that statement. That's actually a good analogy. Yeah, I go to the gym for like 2-3 hours every day. I keep my weight down. I used to be very heavy. I used to be about 305 pounds. I have hypothyroidism. So now I'm at 190. And I was a 57-inch waist. I kid you not. And now I'm at a 33. So I'm happy.
305 pounds on your frame. That's a lot of weight to move around.
Yeah. And believe it or not, I was pretty fast for a fat guy. But I was fighting super heavyweight guys, big guys like this, like monsters. When I was doing Muay Do and Kempo, some of the Pala, the backyard fights, and then some other backyard smokers and open mat freestyles at some of the dojos we went to. But the jiu-jitsu, I thought about it, but it's kind of like, yeah, I just got all my strength. Do I want to go in there? And I don't want to grapple you because you're a big guy. And I'm like, I know he knows my weakness. He's going to take it and snap my arm.
I would never use something to my advantage.
I know, right?
But I think about it from now that you've got the experience under your belt of the camaraderie that comes from martial arts, the mental headspace that comes from it. Do you miss that aspect?
I do. And that's why I go to the gym for so long. I used to go to the gym for an hour and a half. Now I'm 2-3 hours. I was going to the gym and then doing jiu-jitsu. And then even when I tore my ACL, I slowly went back into it. Like I waited 6 months going through rehab and I had that brace on and I was doing back in the Muay Do, but I couldn't kick or jump or anything. I was just working on my forms and exercising and trying to get my strength up. And that really helped me push through and get my quad built back up and recover. And that's one of the beautiful things about martial arts. It's like your mind is focused. Like, I know how to do this. I'm going to do it. This thing here is holding me up, but this is going to help me break through. So that for me, martial arts, and I'll tell you, I started doing it also because of the experiences I had in the military. It helped me to focus. It helped me to flush out those demons that were bothering me. And I could tell you, I had a lot of friends that got into it, but they got into it for the wrong reasons and they got in trouble. But I had a lot of friends that got into it and it saved their lives. So if I could tell anybody, if you're going to do martial arts, do it for the right reasons, because you want that chicken soup for the soul. You want to keep yourself healthy and you want to meet some really good people. That's what you want to do it for.
I found that for me in the 3 years now that I've been doing it, the one thing you'll quickly realize, and I'm assuming it's going to be this way in most jiu-jitsu studios, is they're largely veterans and first responders.
Yeah.
And largely, for the most part, unless you're going to a competition-specific gym,
Yep.
they're all middle-aged.
Yep.
They all understand that we got to go to work on Monday. And for the most part, everybody kind of understands, hey, we aren't professionals, but the thing for me, and I see this with a lot of the nonprofit groups that are out there helping first responders and veterans through jiu-jitsu, is just come and be with others who are same experiences. You can relate to them. You want to do some jiu-jitsu, great. If you just want to be amongst other first responders and veterans for the mental space, the mental health aspect of it, do it. And you talked about, you put the term great. You exercise those demons. Going back to what you experienced, the trauma of virtually almost losing your life to an RPG, from the mental health aspect, have you had to seek any type of professional assistance for that?
Yeah, I mean, the VA has diagnosed me with post-traumatic stress disorder, but it's not like what you think, and I was ashamed to admit this before, but it's not like you look down on, oh, he's a nut job. It's how it impacts me is I am claustrophobic, like you would not believe.
Were you that way before you went in the Marine Corps?
No, I was not. I can't even get in an MRI machine. I have to be sedated. And I get around tight places, like a lot of people, large crowds. I can't go to Disneyland. I don't know why anybody would go to Disneyland anyway. It's so packed there. It's just...
Well, you got to take a fourth out on your house to afford to go to Disneyland.
That's true. Yes, that's true. Unfortunately, but I'm not like a hazard to society or anything like that. I mean, I'm not. I love my wife and my daughter. My daughter's like the gold mine for me. I worship her. But you have to stay busy. And I think that's another reason why I went back to school for my doctorate. And another reason why I did martial arts. And but I've been blessed by a lot of good organizations that have helped me. Like the VFW gave me a $25,000 scholarship. And that's why I also want to run for, city council. I want to give something back. Like, I'm not in this to get rich. When I'm done my time with city council, whether I get reelected or not, when I'm done doing my civic duty city council, I want nothing else to do with politics. I served my country and I gave back to my community. That's why I'm doing this. So I do deal with my post-traumatic stress disorder in different ways, but some of my friends didn't. Some of them are in the system right now. I don't want to name them by heart, but I wish I could have been there to help them, but we all went our ways, the ones that made it back. Cause a lot of the guys that I went with in Fallujah didn't make it back.
Do you remember the first time that the sensation of being claustrophobic hit you, that you were actually aware of not being comfortable in that tight space or around that group of people?
Yeah, I remember. In Fallujah, they had the maps marked with the houses with numbers, so we could just call in a number on the map. And I still have my map because I was a radio operator, and I used to call on those kinds of fixed wing, rotary helicopters, jets. And I didn't call this particular strike, but it was like I don't know if it was an F-15 or an F-16. It was an Air Force pilot. So we were literally, the house was like where we were against the wall, and where the other house was a 10, maybe 15-foot gap. And we were pinned down. We were getting hit really bad by the house next door. I don't know how many bad guys were in there, but somebody called in, and I remember on the radio hearing it says, hey, if you're in this building, be careful. And I'm like, looking at the map, I'm like, everybody needs to go back here on this wall. We're all cuddled in and tight. And what happens is the planes, they come up like this, and then they come down, and they go, and then they're shooting their 20 mics or 30 mics, and they hit the building, and it just collapses. So that's when I started really like shaking and freaking out with that, because the whole freaking building came into our building. And when I realized it was over with, I could barely move because there was just shit everywhere. Excuse my language, but that's when I started having issues.
How long between the RPG attack and that incident?
Well, the RPG attack happened the next day.
Oh, so it was in a very close time period.
Yeah, because I don't forget that one incident. Then, yeah, there was a lot of stuff that happened, and they were just really burrowed in the houses, and we had to, I don't know how many AT-4s we went through, rocket launchers, we would hit where the first and second floor was, because we couldn't get in the house. We were taking too many casualties. We would hit it with an AT-4, and the house would crumble down.
After getting out, did it take you a while, two things, to admit to yourself that you were dealing with post-traumatic stress? And did it take the same amount of time, or where I'm going with this is, how soon did you actually admit to the VA or to somebody outside of yourself that you were struggling?
I would say my focus when I got out was because I was like, oh, I'm not going to have any money coming in, was getting a job. So I really wasn't thinking about it. But it wasn't until like 2006 where somebody mentioned something about it. Says, you seem a little high strung. So it was probably a little over a year after I was out of the Marine Corps. So, yeah.
You've made the nice segue to it. You are running for election for city council here in Temecula.
Yes.
How long were you thinking about city government before you actually said, all right, I'm going to put my name on the dotted line?
I thought about it for on and off for probably about 7 or 8 years, to be honest. But I never saw the opportunity. I was like, nah, it's not. I'm nobody, right? Well, I got an email from the Republican Party. It wasn't directed toward me. It was toward the list. It says, hey, we have Matt Ron who's just going to walk right into this. And I started doing research on this guy, and he said he's a registered Republican, and he's not. He's not a registered Republican. Well, he is a registered Republican, but he's a rhino, Republican in name only. If you look at his voting record and his donor history, he's always donated to Democrats, and that's fine and dandy. Whatever party you're with, own it, but don't lie to the people. Then I looked at some of the things that he supported: Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Council, critical race theory, transgender, drag queen shows, some of the other people that he's involved with up in Sacramento, trying to turn. We're purple right now. We're borderline purple, and Temecula. He's trying to turn it blue, but people don't know that, and I didn't know that. And I actually voted for that guy years ago, and then I started digging into him, and I'm like, well, who's Matt Ron? I think I voted for him. And then I asked some questions. They gave me some data, and it was legit. It was not fake. It was legitimate data. And I started looking more into it. Some of the things that he supported in the past, like the tax increase here in Temecula. He was the deciding vote on that, and the Ready Commission. And I said, well, I think now's the opportunity. I got my education. I'm a military service. I got a lot of good work experience. I've got exposure to the politics in D.C., which you think Temecula has a lot of politics. They don't. It's crazy over there. The there's politics, but
Right.
I've had my house swatted during this run. Like I've had social services and law enforcement come to my house because a group that my opponent associates with called them and reported some really obscene things that was going on with my daughter, and they came and were cleared. I've had my signs stolen. I don't even buy signs anymore. They keep taking them and they're ending up in the trash in a dumpster, or people are moving them and putting them in spots where it's city property. There's been a lot of people out there on social media. Not a lot. There's this group that have been out there, and they're like a group of Satanists and pedophiles that have come at me, and I don't push on. I don't take it, so I push back on them. I'm like, I don't really care who you are. You're not going to scare me. But the Republican Party vetted me, and I know this is a nonpartisan race. I get it, but I'm a Republican. I always will be a Republican, and there's nothing going to change my mind. And if you're a Democrat, that's fine. I respect your position, but don't say you're a Republican when you're really a Democrat. I haven't taken any partisan money or nonpartisan money. I think I raised less than $4,000. My opponent's raised way more than that, but his money comes from partisan organizations. Partisan organizations, once you take their money, if you want to get reelected, you become their tool. They're going to tell you what they want. Me, I can't take that kind of money because of my job. I'm a federal employee. I'm subjected to other laws. And even if I wasn't, I wouldn't take that money. And this is me being genuine about this. I've donated $5,500 of my own dollars to my campaign. And I use my doctorate of business. I market, I use social media. I talk to people. I go out. This is what I am. I designed my own flyers. I printed them on 22-pound paper. I didn't spend those $1.50 per print cards. I have some really awesome people here that have walked. You've seen them yourself. They've come out and walked because they care about this city and they know what I'm about. So now is the opportunity. And if this guy, Matt, if I weren't running against him, he would just walk right in. And if you think it's bad now with the traffic and all the other stuff going on in the school district.
There's no traffic in Temecula. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, right? Yes. He wants to turn this into little LA. That's his goal. So there's housing requirements that California wants. They want to build, and this all started under Barack Obama, where they want to build these low income houses and apartments. Now, I understand people need help, but they want to integrate those into the suburbs. Well, what does that also do? That brings crime, it brings drugs, and a percentage of those are dedicated to homeless. Well, we're already over our requirement for the state of California. We continue to build high-income housing or low-income housing and low-income apartments. We're going to have to raise taxes even more because those people aren't taking housing. And for every law enforcement, for every 100 people, we have to have one law enforcement officer. Well, they're talking about putting 2,000 houses or 2,000 homes or 200 homes with over 2,000 people right down the road over here. Well,
Is that big development that started on the west side of the 15?
Yes. Yeah, that's two. No, not that one. It's another one going towards Summers Bend.
Oh, okay.
Going towards Summers Bend. So,
because that one on the west side of the 15 looks like it's going to be a huge development.
Yes. And if we keep doing what we're doing, you're not going to be able to drop the taxes because you're going to have to hire more officers. And with the cost of inflation, now if we can get inflation down, I want to reduce the taxes. Now is a good time to reduce the sales tax because that'll encourage more people to buy from the local dealerships here, which will generate more money back into the city. So people are like, well, if you drop the sales tax, we're going to lose money. I says, no, it's basic economics. If you have high inflation and product costs of goods are high, you reduce those things that you can to encourage consumer buying and you make it up in quantity. But people don't seem to understand that. It's basic economics 101. As a doctor of business, I can tell you right now, it will work.
Being a federal employee, any hoops or red tape that you had to cut through to actually be able to run for an elected position?
Yes, I had to go through Office of Special Counsel to get reviewed, and they said what they did was they emailed me this sheet that says, don't do this, this, and this, and you're good. Don't accept partisan money. Don't do it during working hours. And what is it? The other one was don't accept money. Don't partisan money. Don't. There was one more. I can't remember the third one, but I know I'm.
Don't do illegal stuff.
Yeah, just don't do anything bad, right? And it's actually I took off today to do this interview, so it's and then I have a social media person that posted. So and another thing, they called my work, my opponent, and his cronies called my work and said, hey, he's doing this, this, and this. And I had to get called and talked to. And I'm like, you have any proof? What are you talking about? Well, you're not supposed to be running for city council. I said, I most certainly can. The Hatch Act says I can. It's a nonpartisan election. I am allowed to by law. So, and they're like, oh, well, we're sorry. I was like, come on, you're the command attorney. You should know better.
I think that's one of the things. I've had a couple guests now who have run for elected positions. Mm-hmm. One gentleman ran for congressman out of Orange County.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned to you, Larry Turner, who's basically the same election you're in. He's running for mayor of San Diego.
Okay.
The thing that really upsets me is you've chosen to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to step off the sidelines, because every one of us sits on the sidelines and complains. I make jokes about how much traffic there is in Temecula.
Yeah.
But at the same token, I'm not looking to jump into the middle of that ring and say, okay, let me see if I can do something about it. But because you chose to do it, your family is being impacted by this.
Yes.
And I think that's and I don't know what politics were like 25, 30 years ago, but I think that that's one of the dirty things that's occurring today.
Yes.
The whole swatting thing, calling in the fake, crime allegations. Larry was talking about how just, reporters basically stalking his family.
I'm getting that too.
And it's like, why? What's the purpose? What are you accomplishing?
They're left-wing nuts, man. I'm getting this guy, Orange County. He's asking me very targeted questions, like specific that fits the left agenda. And then he's naming people that I'm asking me questions if I'm associated with them. And he's very objective. Like he's so biased. And I says, sir, I respectfully decline. No matter what I say, you are going to twist it and you're going to take it in a dishonest way. And it's the left-wing people that are doing this stuff. None of the people that are supporting my campaign, they're angry that my signs are getting stolen. They're angry that my house got swatted, but none of them are doing anything in retribution. Not one of them. And they're all good-hearted Christian people. Now, of course, I believe in a good Lord. I don't go to church every Sunday like I should. I don't carry the Bible with me everywhere. These people are good people. They're good Christian people. We're called like white Christian nationalists, like really racial epithets that are really inappropriate. And I told them, I says, I would rather associate with what you call white Christian nationalists than you satanic pedophile transgender people that are about maiming children. That's literally who this group is. I swear to God, it is crazy. So the old adage, if you surround yourself with good people, you'll do good things.
Do you find that you're in it now, but when you actually kind of got into it and stepped behind the curtain and kind of see how things are going on, I would have to imagine to a little bit, it kind of almost like, man, what did I get myself into? But now it's almost, and I don't mean that, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
I know what you're saying.
It's almost kind of like, man, I committed to it. I got to see this through.
Actually, at first I was like, what am I doing? And it wasn't seeing all the nut jobs that are coming after me. It wasn't the nut job. I call them nut jobs because they're nuts. It was like a little bit of like, why am I doing this? Right. But I'm like, and then the nut jobs started coming out and I'm like, oh, hell yes. This is like fuel for my fire. I'm going through with this because these people don't scare me. They're not going to scare me. I'm a Marine. I've been through hell and high water. What kind of Marine would I be if I back out because a bunch of Satanist pedophile want to maim our kids win? And I'm not going to quit. I'm going to fight for the city. And if people don't elect me because they can elect my opponent, that's their decision. That's their God-given right. But a couple years from now, I'm going to say, I told you, and I will not run again. I'm just saying, you're going to have to find somebody else. I did it once and nope.
Do you think there's a chance that you could get in and that could light a fire beyond just local government?
Yeah, I've been seeing, so on my website, it tells me where they're looking, like what city and state. I've been getting hit the past 2 weeks. I can't even tell you how many times from Sacramento. Why would Sacramento be looking at my website? I've stirred the pot. And then the past week alone, I've gotten 27 hits from Washington, D.C. So,
well, you've already talked about this of whether you like it or not, politics is a business.
yes.
And if you fit the mold of a given group, it's business advantageous to them to try to bring you into their fold.
Yeah, but I don't know any business advantageous people in Sacramento, to be honest.
I'm just saying, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know,
I think it's that political action committee that's down here that's done all these bad things and threatened and aligns with my opponent. They're associated with Gavin Newsom and his group, another political action committee, and another group in LA. I don't want to name this group because I don't want to give them the satisfaction.
Right.
But the DC folks, I don't know. I can't really tell what's going on with that. I don't know why I'd be getting so many hits from DC. Could be work related. Could be, I don't know, somebody, could be, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist. Somebody doesn't like what they hear. They're like, let's see if we can find out about this guy. Because I'm clean. There's nothing on my record. I'm not worried about that. So
I look at it from the other side of the fence in that imagine you are a college recruiter. You're a professional recruiter for a professional football team.
okay.
You might start peripherally looking at some good running back who's a freshman in high school. Just start looking. You know, all I'm getting at is
I see what you're saying.
you've now put yourself out there.
Yes.
I'm assuming you've probably done a couple interviews. You've probably established a name around you of what you are about.
Yes, sir.
For the right recruiters, I'll call them recruiters.
Okay.
This is the minor leagues. Let's see where this guy goes. Let's see if he gets elected. Let's see once he's in, does he stay the course? Does he become or she become more vocal, more active? And now we've got somebody that we go, hey, you were just the city councilman or the mayor of, do you want to try this next step? Maybe state representative. You know, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's almost, and I'm not saying it in a negative way.
No. Yeah. I
It's
got you. You're
almost
right.
like they're keeping an eye out on the minor leagues and seeing who's coming up. And oh, wait a minute, there's a shining star. Let's see what we can do with them. You never know.
Yeah. But that would require me to, I can't do it as a federal employee because that would require me to take partisan money and I really don't want to do that.
How much longer are you looking at till you retire?
10 years.
Oh, okay.
10 years. But I don't know if I want to run for office, man. I really, I'm not in it to make money. And my opponent is in it to make, I know it's kind of weird and people might think I'm lying, but I'm actually a genuine guy who actually cares about the city and wants to give back to the city. In fact, I want to donate my salary that I get from the city to a veteran nonprofit. I'm not kidding. I've been saying that the whole time. I make good money. I don't need the money. I just want to do my civic duty. And then when I'm done, pass it towards somebody else who's going to have the same values, the same mindset. You know,
You would hope.
I hope so, man, because this country's in a really bad spot right now. It is.
I think for me, when I look at politics,
Yeah.
and I'm not even on the sideline. I'm the guy who likes politics from the nosebleeds. That's how much I watch politics.
Yeah.
But you hear stories of people who come in with the best of intentions. And this is going to sound like a defeatist attitude, but and I know it's wrong, but they get in, they get elected, and they think they're going to make a change, and inevitably they run into that wall. And it's the wall of that politics is a business. You either play the game or, hey, that was a nice run of your 4 years. We'll see you, you know. And I hate saying that because I think of a young kid who might have aspirations like, man, I want to make a change, or a veteran or somebody. But the thing is and I talked to the other gentleman that I spoke to who was running for Congress, the congressional seat of Orange County. And he said that was one of the biggest things for him was not just the politics between the two political parties, but the politics within the party. You know, are you the team player within the team, kind of deal.
Yep.
It's
I agree
dirty.
with you. It is dirty. And I've seen that not with the Republican parties that I've dealt with here, like the California Republican Party, the Temecula Valley Women's Republican Club, and the Temecula Area Republican Assembly. But other people that are associated with those groups, they say they want to beat a particular candidate, but I haven't seen them donate to those other candidates. I haven't seen them. They talk and talk and talk. And I don't need their money. I don't care about the money. But you're absolutely right. And how do I know that implementing effective change is very difficult. And this is one of the things that's involved in my dissertation. But sometimes you have to give to get. So the city council is a majority, right? You have the majority of people. If a certain city council person wants something, he's going to have to give me something that my people want. If he doesn't give me, I'm not going to give him. However, if the one thing that he wants is some crazy batshit lunatic thing, I don't care about what I want. I'm definitely not giving him what he wants. Because what I'm going to ask for isn't batshit crazy, pardon my language. It's a requirement, a need, something that the people truly need and will benefit the city. But if this guy wants to do, and I'm not going to name this person, wants to do this one thing that he's been doing and wants to continue to spend millions of dollars, the current city council member, I'm not going to go for it. I will not. I'm not going to say what he's doing. But if he wants something else, you got to give. That's how you make it work. That's how you implement effective change within politics. That's the only way. But I will not endorse something that's nuts. When it comes to screwing with our kids, raising taxes, building low-income housing apartments, that's not even on the table. No way, because I live in this city, and I don't want to have nothing to do with that.
I would say that for me, when I look at people who run for politics, and I'm going to clump you into this because you've now jumped on that boat and you've raised your hand. Unfortunately, 99.9% of them, I honestly believe to my core, they're doing it to feed themselves, to feed their ego, to feed that I'm in control. I really don't believe, maybe at the local, like the city council level, you might get people who are going in to truly try to do something better. I think as you move up, especially you get to the state level, it's so much more about them as a person and what they gain from it. I could be completely wrong. And this is just my opinion.
So I met Kate Sanchez. You know who Kate Sanchez, our state assemblywoman in this area?
I know the name.
She's running for re-election. I'll tell you, she's a genuine person. She's a sweetheart. Matt Ryan ran against her, my opponent. Threw her under the bus about her past domestic violence, where she was subjected to domestic violence. That's how low this guy is.
But you see that in politics.
I would never do that.
It's a shame.
I would never do that. You don't bring somebody's family into it. I bring his track record and what he's done, and that's not slander. Those are facts. But I don't bring his family into it. I have nothing to do with his family. Those are off limits. Him and his group have done whatever they can. So I must be scaring them some way, somehow.
But just as a human, you can only take so much mud being thrown at you before you kind of got to go, all right, this is garbage. I'm not going to just sit here and let you beat the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Well,
unfortunately, it would be nice to get my opponent and those people inside Jason's dojo.
There we go.
It would be, I would solve so many problems just 4 at a time. No problem, man. You could get it on the podcast. But you know what, dude? They hide behind the computer. They hide behind the telephone. They abuse the system. They have no idea what it's like to be put in a hurt locker. They don't. They won't. They don't want it. But unfortunately, these are the idiots that we have in the world. I call them keyboard warriors. So
I asked Larry Turner that because he's also done Jiu Jitsu.
Yeah.
He had some injuries, but he's hoping to get back to it because he's got young boys who are going to get into it.
Oh, yeah.
And I joked with him. I said, so if you get elected, is it going to be open mats with the mayor? Sunday afternoon, open mat with the mayor or something like that. But, I wish you the best.
Thank you.
I commend you for stepping off the sideline.
Appreciate that.
It wouldn't be for me. That's
hard.
But like with you, I'm sure it took you a while to get there.
Yeah.
We all kind of have that initial kickoff like, man, and you get frustrated and maybe you calm down a little bit. And then over time, you're going, all right, I got to do something.
Yeah.
I can't say that I'll never get to that point, but to 55 years in my life, it hasn't happened yet. So I wish you the best with it.
I appreciate that, sir. Thank you.
Closing this out, going back to that whole veteran transition thing, thinking about all the experience that you've had in the professional world since being out. Any last pieces of advice for a veteran making their transition and moving on with their lives?
I would say in today's military, there's no excuse, because when I was, and here's, I like to point out facts. I was on the old Chapter 31 GI Bill. When I graduated my bachelor's, I still had $14,700 in student loan debt because the VA only paid so much, the old GI Bill. When I went for my master's, I had 8 months, 18 days left on the old GI Bill, Chapter 31. But because of the times that I was in the military, I also qualified for Chapter 33, the new GI Bill. The VA made me use the 8 months, 18 days left. It gave me 12 more months of the new GI Bill, completely covered my master's. I got $800 a month for BAH because I was going online. I used that to pay off my student loans. When you leave the military, there is no excuse for you to become homeless today because you have the GI Bill. It's like San Diego County's like $3,000 a month. You can get an apartment. If you're single, if you're married, you're going to have to get a second job. It is what it is. Who cares? Work at McDonald's, whatever. Finish your degree. Use the GI Bill. You have that blanket of security. My era did not have that. We didn't get that extra money. You went to school and you worked full time. So if you're not using your GI Bill, that's your own fault. And you're a burden on society because that is free and you need to use that. We need more veterans to get educated and back into our society to unscrew what in the hell is going on with this country right now.
I appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing your story.
Appreciate that.
I appreciate you watching. But before you go, if you like the video, please hit that subscribe button. Also, any comments are appreciated. Thank you.